Liverpool are officially out of the Champions League, but I have something that's more concerning to me. I got to be honest. Mo Salah was crying at the end of the game. I was crying. Kweku was crying. He's a Chelsea fan. Do you think that's the end of his Ballon d'Or challenge?
Well, I definitely wasn't crying. I might have given it a little fist pump when PSG booked their place in the next round. Is it the end of his Ballon d'Or challenge? Maybe, because it feels like that is a prize where the winner is often, put in that position because of something they've achieved on the continental or international stage, more than what they've done in the Premier League. He's had an unbelievable Premier League season. There's no question about that. But in terms of the Champions League, going out at the round of 16, it is going to hinder his chances, I think, of winning that massive prize.
I'd agree. Obviously, football's a team game, so the result is the most important thing. I do think the result was at the forefront of his mind, potentially his last ever Champions League game for Liverpool. But when you're talking about the individual accolades, and Mo Salah does think about those things, I think that does put a pin in his bid to win the Champions League, the Ballon d'Or this year. And a lot of people have been talking about it as well. It's been a narrative around Mo Salah, and I think he probably viewed it as a crowning achievement for his time in England. But if you don't progress deep into the Champions League, it's very difficult to win that award.
I think, as you just said, I think the round of 16 is the killer. You make the semis, you got to Real Madrid. I think you could still have a chance at the Ballon d'Or, and I think it was telling, his lack of celebration or condolences for Darwin Núñez, and then also when Liverpool went out, it was very individual, I think, and I don't blame him, because I think I watched that game and I thought someone just take the weight off him. I don't know if obviously I'm a Liverpool Salah fan. Did you feel like you were going step up, or were you going someone help this man out?
A bit of both. But ultimately, if you are that good, you're going to get criticism if you don't show up in two legs. And Mo Salah is that good. I think we've all accepted it. Some people are reluctantly accepting it, but Mo Salah is of that caliber. And I've always said Salah's got. I know that he's a nice guy ostensibly, and he does a lot of good things off the pitch, but he's got way more Ronaldo in him than Lionel Messi. And so for Mo Salah, this was so important, and it was very individual after the game. And I think, like I said, for a multitude of reasons, but when in two legs against a PSG team that are very good, but they're a blossoming side, they're not quite there at the level yet. If you can't put your imprint on those two games in the Champions League, where we've seen the all-time greats do it consistently, then unfortunately you are going to get criticism, which is being levelled at Mo Salah at the moment.
I'm not quite sure how to read his kind of reaction after the game. Was it him sort of being really fed up of kind of how the two legs had gone? Because obviously the performance in the second leg was better, but they still weren't able to break PSG down in the way that Liverpool normally rip teams apart. So was it a bit of frustration? Was he thinking about his own individual situation? I think it's a bit unfair to say that he definitely was. I think there was a disappointment just generally across everything. But I was looking at him and thinking, you need to step up. Because I didn't look at PSG and think, this is a side that have gone out of their way here to adjust in order to simply shut out Mo Salah. And I think we've seen that in the past. I see it with Arsenal players. We see it with Manchester City players, where teams set up very much with one individual in mind and about how they're going to stifle them. I never felt like PSG had purposely gone above and beyond to close him out, yet he still had very little impact.
I think I watched the game and I thought, he's 33, 34, and he's coming up against a left-back who basically didn't attack. And I think that's how they manage the situation. Nuno Mendes is an attacking left-back, but they literally said to him, just stay hooked onto him. Kind of like how United used to use Wan-Bissaka at times, where if there's a tricky winger, they'd go, don't go forward. Your job is be physical. You're faster, you're stronger, you should be able to handle him. And then also, apart from a 10-minute spell in the second leg, they shut off Trent. And so the service to Salah was going from Szoboszlai, so it was clunky. It wasn't very effective. And then when Trent came to life in those 10 minutes in the second leg, I felt like Salah came to life. I do agree, though. He could have done more, but I also was looking at... He played one into Diaz, where Diaz should have hit it in the second leg, and I was screaming at my TV going, he can't do it. And then Diaz pinged it back to him, and I was like, he can't do anything with that.
And that's the issue. When he had the runners and riders of the likes of Bobby Firmino and Sadio Mane, who would show up on big occasions and get you that goal, I never felt that of a Luis Diaz. Nothing Diaz is a very, very good player, but you're talking about that chance where he cut back in. It's like, hit that first time. Sadio Mane would have hit it first time, either forced a save and the keeper would have parried it into a player, or he would have scored. And I feel like with Mo Salah, where he's refined his game a lot as he's got older, Mo Salah of the 2017-18 season or the 18-19 season would have had a way bigger impact in that game because he was maybe more involved. He's become a bit more of a playmaker, but he's less involved in the game. It's more about the final product. And in these two legs, you saw that. It was a Mo Salah that couldn't really get going. And when... I wouldn't say he got snuffed out by Nuno Mendes, but when he couldn't get joy against him, he wasn't providing much else. And it's a shame for one of the players who's having arguably the greatest individual season in Premier League history. In the Champions League, they just haven't done it.
We'll talk about PSG in a second. I think the other thing that I would probably say in terms of Liverpool was Slot didn't rotate against Southampton much. And that might be, and I think he even said after the PSG game, it's the highest intensity game I've ever been involved in. And I think because he's top of the league and because he's done so well in the Champions League, people forget that he's actually still very new to these scenarios. And I feel as though he maybe had a bit too much faith in his side going, we'll beat Southampton with this 11 and then we'll do the same 11 again 3-4 days later.
Yeah, maybe. I do think there's a lot to be said for rhythm, though. And I think when you're in the winning rhythm, you want to keep that going. And I've seen managers in the past make too many changes, even in a Premier League game, in a game that looked like it should have been a given, all of a sudden becomes tricky. And the Southampton game had its moments as well, where you looked at it and you thought, hold on a minute, this isn't as straightforward as it should be on paper. So I don't really blame Slot for that, but I think PSG just showed everybody that, you know, we often look at sort of foreign leagues and we go, well, the intensity is different and the physicality level is completely different. And so when they come up against a Liverpool or an Arsenal or a Manchester City, they're going to struggle just by default. And actually, PSG showed you that they can play with intelligence, that they can play with the aggression that they need to, and that physically they can compete. And even though some of their players physically, in terms of their stature, are not particularly big or overpowering, they were able to do that. So they matched Liverpool not just on a physical level, but on a technical level as well. And I think they deserve more credit than Slot deserves criticism.
We definitely need to talk about PSG because I think I watched that second leg and I thought if they win here, obviously their Champions League curse is that they haven't won it. But I think that lifts the curse. Because there was, if you remember, Barcelona, in so many situations where PSG have been close and they get done in the second leg, they're not naive anymore. I didn't feel they were naive. I thought they were really clever. I thought they were crafty. And then, obviously, with this front line that they've got, they're frightening to play against. And I actually think, even as a Liverpool fan, Liverpool deserved to go out because PSG was so much better.
Yeah, they were so much better. The composition in the midfield is brilliant. I love the way that they've got technical ability in there, but also the willingness to run and cover ground. The front three is fluid. I do think Dembele did a decent job, and they obviously switch around with Kvaratskhelia, Dembele and Barcola. They're pretty fluid in that front three. I do think they're missing that front man to really make them that deadly force in Europe, and I do think they'll come a cropper eventually in this competition when they play against, I don't want to say better teams. There's not many better teams than Liverpool in Europe, but come against maybe more crafty teams like a Real Madrid potentially in the semi-final. But this is a PSG team that are playing with the handbrake off. That for the first time in a long time, they haven't got a Galactico. For the first time in a long time, they are not one of the favourites to win the Champions League. And they've just warmed up in this competition. We saw them play against Arsenal earlier on in the competition and looked way off of it. But the Champions League is about picking your moments. And how many times have you seen Real Madrid struggle initially and then warm up towards the latter stages of the competition? I think this is the best chance in a long time for PSG to win it or to make a final again for the first time since 2020. I think this is a really good side. And give Luis Enrique credit. He's a manager that's gone through a lot off the pitch. He's really found the formula of this PSG team. Like I said, got rid of the Galacticos, got players that are all bought into his style of play, and we're seeing it play out in front of us. I know League A is not the greatest league in the world. They normally win that at a canter, but in the high leverage moments in the Champions League, they're proving that they can do it for the first time in a long time.
I think the key word is balance in terms of what he's managed to sort of discover with this PSG side, is because you look at them off the ball, you look at how aggressive they can be, but they're also in this sort of mindset of the minute we win the ball back, the system thing, it kind of goes out the window. And we've seen other managers, I think, go too far on that. I think Mikel Arteta is a great example of where when his team when his team win the ball, they're so focused on what happens if they then go and lose it, that takes away that creativity and that spark sometimes. Whereas with PSG, it is literally 3 players up top. You guys go and express yourselves. Barcola, you want to go on the left. You want to pop up on the right. You want to switch with Kvaratskhelia as much as you want. You want Dembele to interchange with them. You can do that. And that unpredictability, that spontaneity in their play makes them so difficult to defend against. And look, we talk a lot about system players nowadays and how these players with the spark and the kind of mavericks have drifted out of football. That's certainly the case. But at PSG, there's 3 of them in the front line. And that, for me, with a good, solid base and sort of solid unit to build from, that's the perfect balance of a football team. And it looks like they got it.
I was talking to a friend about this PSG front line, and Dembele is a man who's been in and out of form consistently throughout his career. A lot of that's down to injuries. Obviously, Kvaratskhelia is very, very exciting. He was great at Napoli, and Barcola was young. But he was saying, if those 3 players were rocked up a team like Chelsea, for example, like you could easily imagine in that front 3 flopping. But that's why I give credit to the manager, because he's found a way to get that to work. Dembele is probably the most informed player in Europe in 2025. And I just love the way that every man knows what they want to do or what they need to do, but also have that creativity and give you those vibes as well that you love to watch in Champions League football. I really like the composition of the side, and they've got a favourable draw in the next round. So let's see how far they can go.